Good morning and welcome to Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the scenes on the stories that make the Elm City tick, and nothing ticks better than Pundit Friday, which is to begin here in the WNHH-FM studio. With the number one pundits in the media universe, like the pulse of front porch positivity, the dairy-free goddess of our grassroots radio operation, the Boulevard Ball, managing editor of Inner City News, host of WNHH's Love Babs Love Talk, Babs Rawls Ivy.
Yes.
See that? She's,
I like that.
The queen of quippery and quintessence of compassion. La Voz Hispana publisher Norma Rodriguez Reyes.
Yeah.
The detonator of digital dynamite.
Yeah.
The master of meme.
Yeah.
The highfalutin factotum of fission and fusion. Christener of crowdsourced crockery and creativity. The Winston Welder of wisdom. Premier punk-popping pugilist.
Whoa.
The preordained pastor and prophet of paradise, our DJ Deliverance. The filial force of fortuitous fomentation, ouster of obstinance. And ostentation, the savior of civility. The hurricane of heavenly homily and the conqueror of cannabis. Commerce.
Yes.
Joe Ugly in the morning.
Joe Ugly.
Alex Taubes says good morning. Marcia Ricks joined and said hi, the best pundits on the radio, coming from our favorite pundit, Markeisha.
Yeah.
Hello,
Markeisha, we miss you.
So everyone, I had a question. I felt like this was a week of closure. Like for years,
Closure,
all the
opening.
stories of, not of everything, right? Like the school board mess is going on one more week. They're negotiating, you know, how Carol Burks is going to leave because they had a terrible...
I haven't been up on this. So
they
what happened?
they have a evaluation that shows her doing terribly, but they're not going to go. They're going to let her leave on her terms if they can negotiate a departure.
Are they negotiating now?
Yeah.
So she is
the
willing
question
to
is,
negotiate?
Yeah, the question is, does she get all her 2.5 years of money? Some of it, whatever they do, I'm hoping that for the time they're paying her out, they get somebody else. They don't hire another person. They put someone who's in house to run the shop, who knows how to get the buses running, who knows how to make sure stuff's signed. Oh, okay, Joe's and does not add a position to the budget because that's another person we're paying out, and it's just
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope it works out best. Carol Burks, I wish her the best because she came in a impossible situation. I do question how she was hired. I think it was a terrible process, bad decision, not her fault. She's a very professional woman who's had a good career. They didn't give her a chance to do it right, whether or not you thought she should have come. And, you know, it's the third straight person in 3 years we got leaving that school board. At least the one left on good terms.
But, you know, here's the thing. This is happening all across the country. I was reading a story.
You know, that's interesting. Yes,
I
right.
was reading. I
Yes,
read
you're
story
right.
after story across the country that school boards are firing people and they're having trouble with superintendents and because people are not very clear about what they want, and when they get what they think they want, they don't allow for the person to come in and do. And change takes time. You know, it's not going to be overnight. And
you got to come in with support.
You got to come in with support, and you have to come, I think, with these kinds of jobs with some political sophistication.
Okay, yes, you do, or at least some knowledge of the local politics.
Yes.
Well,
and
hopefully
you
the next
can't
person
put your
won't be
head
picked.
down
Right? But hopefully next time, if a whole community doesn't want you to hire someone, and
You
hire them because they're going to give money to a political power broker who can't even get you votes, maybe that won't be the process next time. What do you think?
I don't think she did that.
Of course, that was
Okay.
100% what it was, Norma. 100%.
Do you
That
know
reverend brought her to the dance, worked it, got his money, and everything fell apart.
Mhm.
Just for the record.
Okay. Did the check clear?
It sure did, and people got hired, and
You know that
contracts were
check
signed.
cleared.
And there's another one in the works, too, that may or may not happen. But
Wow.
we did get closure on some stuff. Rabbi Daniel Greer, really horrible story, upsetting story, very prominent rabbi in our community. I mean, he was always controversial, but he did stabilize a lot of housing in the community. He did have a nice community where I used to sometimes pray. And it turned out he was raping kids there for many, many years. And he lost a civil suit. Now he finally lost his criminal suit this week. People were worried at the end because the state had messed up. Oh, by the way, on the superintendent, Markeisha Ricks, even superintendents with support don't last long. So true. Alex Talbot, the problem is that schools are extremely underfunded in an unfair system based on property taxes. The Connecticut Supreme Court ruled 4-3 against cities like New Haven, saying the state is violating kids' rights. Our state legislators did nothing the 2 years after to respond to that. I agree with Alex, but you still can pick someone who can do well with a lot of support, and you can pick someone who doesn't have the support for the wrong reason, then not give them a chance to do the job. I mean, there is a difference between those two things. It's true that we fight about the scraps and personalities when there's a systemic disadvantage we're dealing with from the beginning, but maybe we should like take our hand and play it.
Mm.
But it's true also that when you bring in anyone new, there's going to be serious problems because the new person really doesn't understand who the players are.
And that's why I say it's very
Okay.
important that they get a knowledge of the local.
I know, but
local
you have to
politics.
be willing, though.
Yeah.
See, Carol
Yeah.
was not willing to sort of dance with.
Right.
She wasn't willing to come to the dance. She just thought, I'm gonna do a good job. I know what to do. I want to do a good job, and all the politics around me, I'm not going to involve
And
myself
there was
in.
some style. I mean, the way you spend money on these consultants who your friends and hide it, that didn't go over great.
Yeah, that didn't go over well either.
That wasn't-
But I understand it. You know, when you sit and talk, you understand it because you want to bring you have a vision, and you're like, I know these people that can execute this vision. But it was a misstep, right? So.
But you're allowed to make missteps.
You're allowed
and there were
to
communication
make,
missteps, but the guns were out, drawn before.
Well,
the,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I think the circumstances in which she was hired created a lot of this atmosphere of distrust, and you only got this job because of blah blah blah.
And
blah,
then
blah,
the mayor
blah.
and the board chair who bring you a month or two into your tenure,
Throw
hold
you
the
under
press,
the bus.
hold a press conference where they don't invite you and slam you for your decision.
And like,
Yeah, but
That
someone
was
to
it.
do something that drastic, something she
Thank
must have done.
You.
Yeah, she sent out layoff notices, and
Okay.
and they decided to
okay.
do it. Okay, but then how
Okay.
do you deal with that if you brought somebody? Do you call them in and do something together? Do you deal with it, or do you go publicly distance yourself into trying to run a
Well,
place?
I mean, I think it's a political move for somebody who's not political.
Yeah.
Well, who was it that brought it to the public first?
So would you guys agree with me
No.
that of course you don't agree with me. In addition to having someone in house right now, and I was Eileen Tracy or who could just keep it running, without controversy. But then the next person would be someone from inside, even if they left a couple of years ago, like that wonderful principal from Lincoln Bassett who got stolen by
And she left
Bridgeport.
her job in Bridgeport.
Yeah,
Did
yeah,
she
maybe
already?
bring her
Oh.
back. She's gonna have to get one more degree, but could do that in processor. So either someone who's right there now, or Dolores Garcia Block, or somebody who has been in the New Haven system, maybe doesn't have to get a whole lot of attention themselves as being the superstar of the month. Just can really just run the schools and maybe not create more positions. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I heard the name.
Because sometimes
I
they
heard
like to bring a
Kermit's name
superstar.
been kicked around.
Yeah, Kermit Carolina. would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
I've heard.
But he's
Kermit's
gonna
name.
he's gonna pass that to Gary though. They're a team, Gary Highsmith. Yeah.
All
I'm just
right.
saying. I think that's the way it works, but I don't know.
Really?
I could be wrong about that. But yeah, and he's in the system. I mean, I just would like to see them go in-house and a little lower key, like they did with the police. I don't think this is the time you bring in somebody else new to the dance. There are times you do that, but someone with a lot.
Well,
Like,
I mean, they added Larry Conaway to the board, and
he'd be great.
and
yeah.
people sort of like the way he thinks about education and the way that he has run
His
things.
whole
So
approach to stuff is very interesting.
Good
I like
leader
it.
on
Yeah,
alternative
he's
ed,
good.
good
Plus, he's
dealings
been in the
with the
system
neighborhood.
for a long time.
He's been
also.
in the system a
So
long
he
time.
knows everyone.
I mean,
Yeah.
if he's interested, I'd love to see him in the mix too.
Mhm.
I'm just saying we got people in the mix. Recently left the system, because a lot of people left the system this year, or still in a high position who I think we don't need to look beyond for. Just the way I thought Mayor Hart did it right with the police chief search.
But we'll see. I mean, whoever makes that decision, whether it's Tony Harp or, the other guy.
Every
Justin
time
Alec.
we have brought in outsiders, it hasn't been good for the city.
I don't like the term outsider, insider. I don't
I'm
like
with you,
that.
Babs. That's one thing I love about
Because
you.
I feel very
You love
global,
people.
and
Yeah.
I just think it's got to be a combination of talent, of course, education, and some political savvy. And political savvy meaning a way to understand how to have relationships across neighborhoods, a way to have conversations across employers. I mean, there are people who have a real knack for that, who know how to have, who can have a conversation with Yale Corporation at the same time having a conversation with Yale University, at the same time having a conversation with Unite, having a conversation
Yeah.
with parents, having a conversation with students. So you need somebody who has the ability to sort of bring all these desperate parties together and work together.
And to be able to administer in a political environment.
That's my
because
point.
the truth is that the city of New Haven is not administered in an administrative way.
But should
is
it be?
politically
I mean, the new-
administered?
Justin
it should
Elicker
have
is
been, but the
promising to
problem
do
is
that.
that for the longest time it has never been that way. So when you want to change something, change is not necessarily, people talk about change, let's change. Ellicker's whole thing, But the truth is, a lot of people do not want change. They like what they know.
Right. But it's not only just liking what you know. I mean, sometimes we all shoot for the change. But what the heck are we changing for?
I know. And to what?
What does that mean?
Exactly. You want change, but do you need change is always the question.
Right, so I'd agree with you guys. I think that there's times when you do and times when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's an internal person who can bring change. Nick Pastor knew how to bring drastic change to a police port that was having just black kids beat up at random by cops on corners and gay people entrapped coming out of partners. You needed drastic change.
Mm-hmm.
And an insider was able to do that because he knew where the bodies were buried and how to cut people off the knees, just to be honest about it. Sometimes an outsider works. I mean, I think that after the FBI Billy White scandal, Jim Lewis was the right guy to come for a couple of years. I think that John Alston, even though I don't think he's going to be here much longer, he was the right guy at the fire department when there were all that stuff at the top. He understood, as Norma said, how politics work, and that doesn't mean he made decisions on a political basis, but he could operate. So I just think it's one of those times for the schools. I could be wrong, but I think it was one of those. This is one of those times when we can stay in-house.
We all could be wrong, Paul, but I think you make a good point. It is that we probably should look within ranks.
Yeah.
But the truth is that any administrator that comes in should not drastically make changes. They need to check out the lay of the land, see who is who are the people that the rest of the people can come before, and then try to pick their brains to be able to administer. But if you come in just changing everybody,
I don't know about
you're
that,
going to
Norma.
create problems.
Sometimes I don't care about the creating problems, because I think there are people that are problem solvers by nature and by ability. So I'm not worried about that. I think I want to see somebody come in with a sweeping change. I want to see somebody come with sweeping change that people can be inspired. Because I think if you inspire people in the right sort of way, sweeping change can be like a lightning rod.
But before you can do the change, you have to change the people inside to be so that everybody's on the same page, so you don't have an issue like you did the mayor saying one thing and the administrator saying something else.
So
Alex have to be on the same page.
Alex Tauber says something. He said, change is inevitable. You need change even to keep things the same. Change is a hollow political message. That's really interesting because he supported Barack Obama, whose one word besides hope was change. They did songs with change. I think he's saying that because Justin Ellicker said change and he was for Tony.
Okay, so let me just say this real quick here.
Change New Haven, in and of itself is annoying to me.
So Norman, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that the next president should come in and keep the Trump team, or should he come in and do sweeping change?
Are we already on that subject?
Well, you know what we are on. We're on Pundit Friday, which is at 103.5 FM, live, SteveIndependent.org. Now, I don't know if Norma felt there needed to be change at Yeshiva of New Haven, which is a small and used to be intense religious culture, right-wing religious school and Jewish community where I used to sometimes pray on Elm Street, where the rabbi there was raping little young boys for a long time. And this week we got some closures. I said a jury found him guilty of 4 counts of risk of injury to a minor. He faces 79 years old. He faces a cumulative total of 80 years in jail. Obviously, he won't get that. Any reactions on the trial, folks, and what should happen next?
I mean, I think listen. It's rare that people who harm children get any jail time and get convicted. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, whatever he gets. He's an old man. He's gonna die in jail, right? Or he's gonna whatever. I think my concern is that how do we as a society prevent these kinds of crimes happening to children who are our most vulnerable among us? How and what's going to happen to these kids who are now adults? I think how do we help them go through this? Because honestly, him going to jail is not closure for them.
There are so many victims and collateral victims. There are family members. That family is torn apart. There's a whole community that was shaken up because he was this strong leader. He was like a cult leader.
Yeah.
And you got the neighborhood where he owns 50 houses, most of them multi-families in a small area.
He should be stripped of that. I hope are they doing some
well, when he lost the $21 million lawsuit, I don't think they've gotten even $1 million yet because he protected
my only regret about this whole
for $21
thing
million.
My regret about this whole thing is that, you know what, unfortunately, this issue with him is not something only of him.
It's not isolated.
Mm-hmm. That has been going on and will continue to go on as long as the first time somebody does something, you don't say something.
Yeah, and that's true.
And-
you know, and religious communities have a particular
Yeah,
brand
they
of this. I
hide
mean,
everything
Catholic communities
underneath
have been
the
having
rug.
it.
Yeah.
They have been, all of them, all of them are guilty.
The people that sort of do this stuff, not only do they understand how to manage the people around them so that they can do this harm. See, that's the thing, that adults have to understand when they're being monitored and not challenged, when they're being handled by predatory people. That's the thing. Predatory people know how to gain your trust.
And Alex Talbot says how's he going to pay bail while he hasn't paid off his civil lawsuits? That's interesting. That's the question we've all had, but he's done it. He had a very expensive lawyer, did a great job. Got 4 cousins with Willie Dow. He obviously is finding somehow he owns 49 out of those 50 houses straight out, no debt. So they collect rent. Technically, he says nonprofits own them, which is how he's not paying the $21 million he lost. He's saying those aren't mine. They're just these nonprofits were really just he's the nonprofit. But and then his wife got caught by a judge trying to move some money into her account so she could pay. But somehow he paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, and somehow he came up with the $75,000 for 10% of his bail this week. But there was an interesting at the trial. Chris Peake did an amazing job covering this trial, in my opinion, for The Independent. This trial, there's all this stuff brought up where they try to blame victims, or like for instance, when they're raped as kids, and some of this went into adulthood. And as Alex pointed out, how many poor people get bail after conviction of raping children? Tell me about it. He's so right.
Oh, true.
They were saying that because this guy waited so long to report it, how could he really been abused? And since he was sort of, under the grip of this guy, because, these predators, they pick, this happened in high school I went to, they pick the vulnerable kids. And they, who are weak and need a father figure or whatever, are in lost kids, and then so they don't immediately, they're scared to tell on you, especially in a religious environment, and then they even keep coming back for a while and get it more. So that I thought it was very outdated and cruel the way in these cases they're continuing in 2019 to go against all science, all the research we know about how people don't tell about being abused for decades and the reasons.
Because it plays on people's fear and understanding that if something is bad happening to you, you would immediately stop it, that you would immediately tell someone, and that you would not continue, because if you continue, that means you are condoning it in some kind of way. That is the thinking of people, because the average person cannot wrap their brains around assault and sexual exploitation of children.
Can't they? Really?
They just can't do it.
But look at Penn State.
Sandusky.
Oh God! Don't even
That
get
was just as sick.
I don't even have to go that far. I can just look at my own life. I know what it's like to sort of be a child and somebody take advantage of you, exploit you, and the adults around don't have the capacity to intervene.
Is it that they don't have the capacity, or they just don't want to because
it upsets all the order in your life?
Is just,
I really think it's a capacity issue.
People go along to get along too doggone much. We're conditioned to do what we always say: be the team, work as a team.
Well, I think here's the thing:
I think that all stems
people
into
around
that.
people who are predatory. Yeah, there's a lot of layers to that. When you are an adult telling on another adult, you run the risk of losing a great deal of gains. And for some, if you are a woman in a marriage to a man who is abusive, then you have to think about, if I tell or if I share, if I then I've got to rethink my whole life.
I've got to
worry about rent. I've got to worry about how I'm going to do this.
But look what the results could be. The results could be. No. I hear what you're saying.
I hear what you're saying, but we got to look past that. It's easy to sort of say why, but I understand it.
But I also think this is very generational. For instance, there was a campaign that said, say no. Younger generations will tell you straight out, no.
That's not true.
Whereas the older generation, I think all of us were taught how you're supposed to be quiet. You're supposed to hide things in the closet. Never take your skeletons out of your closet or your family or any of that stuff.
And Babs, you struck it over me too, because even short of the horrors of sexual abuse and physical abuse, I've been around people being abusive, just verbally and humiliating people, and I haven't spoken up when I should have.
Wow.
Exactly.
And I've seen you speak up.
Exactly.
That's one of the reasons I really love and admire Babs Rawls-Ivy. What?
Shots fired.
But Norma, we have normalized sexual exploitation of children and women. Even the Bible sort of, there's instances in the Bible and other holy texts, other holy books where this kind of thing is almost a rite of passage. So we have normalized
And
it.
there's this religious, and then I've got the Greek philosophers of the sort of like mentor-mentee thing. That's almost like you're supposed to.
Yes.
And like, I even think of like, I always had this weird thing about Allen Ginsberg because he was my favorite poet. Like I love his poetry.
Mhm.
Like I don't really get a lot of poetry, but I love her poetry. And and he was really active in NAMBLA.
Yeah.
National Man Boy Love Association. And that just like grossed me out, you know. And
What was that? What was that? I don't even know there was
the
such a
beep,
thing.
yeah. And
There's these men who believe that they should have relationships
All
with
right,
boys.
ooh.
and you're sort of like,
And,
that's
and it's
fine.
consensual. Like, no, children can't consent to sex.
No.
And Alex says taking complaints and complaining seriously is central to this. How about closure with Tony Harp this week? So this was an unusual series of events. She lost a primary quite soundly. She knew she might lose, but she wasn't ready to announce the night she lost if she's continuing her campaign because she's on a ballot line of the Working Families Party, which has 5 or 10 members in New Haven, and immediately
Don't
said,
exaggerate, okay?
Okay, maybe 10, and then I think it might be 25 actually. And she and they said we're not going to support you, but she thought, am I going to keep running? She's an incumbent. She's had a very long career. A few of her supporters are really pushing her hard, and a lot of people who didn't want her to run were told to just stay away and don't talk to her. And but she waited 2 weeks to make a decision. It hurt her, the loss. It was hard for her to make a decision. And then this week she put out a release. She didn't speak publicly or take questions. She gave a release saying, I'm not running. My campaign's over, but I'm leaving my name on the ballot if you want to vote for me. And I have a few thoughts about that. Do you think that's closure? How do you feel? I know Joanne Carter, who I always love, thanks for listening. Conditions have created morality clauses. That's true. So what do you think? How did you feel this week? Did you get closure with Tony Harp? What did you think of her statement?
I never think about closure of things. I think moving forward, the fantasy Babs believes this. That those that support her will get out there and knock on doors in ways that they didn't do in the primary.
Still?
Even though her name is still on the ballot, people can still vote for her.
Yep.
So she could still win. Like there's a win that could be had here, but it has to be an organizing tool in which they have not used. They have not done. That's the fantasy me talking. Those folks who still support her on their own dime needs to get out there and amass people to knock on doors to encourage them to vote. That can be done. That's not out of the realm of possibility. So
in Paul's mind, it is.
And let me tell you something. If that happens, that changes how we do politics. That changes how we do elections. Because she didn't remove her name off the thing. Her name is still there. So people of good conscience who still believe that they want her to be her mayor, she's got my vote. I'm already voting for her.
But Babs, the people left with her are not the people who actually got the votes she got.
I agree. No. I'm just saying, this is the fantasy.
There's a strong independent. Hold on, let me just finish. There's a strong independent group who feel like they did not get a chance to let their voice be heard. And they wanted to vote for her. I've spoken to at least 3 or 4 of them who said, I'm an independent, and I wanted us to vote for her. I was looking forward to the general election.
So do you think it's going to be different from 2013? Okay, that's fair. 2013, most of the independents went for Justin Elker. You think that's going to change now?
Probably can.
Listen, the possibility is very real. That anything could happen.
Just because something happened in today, don't mean that's engraved for tomorrow.
Listen, this is why we have elections. I don't think Justin Elker could just walk in there and say, "I got this."
I agree. The thing is, I wonder whether these people are being nice to Tony Harp.
Oh, they probably not. But
No. By saying we're going to keep this illusion going. Mm-hmm. Tony Harp finally said it was hard for her after 32 years of winning and a beloved career. It was hard for her that she lost.
It doesn't matter.
But she finally said, look, I'm not going to have money. I'm not going to have campaign. It's not what we can do. So
I don't think
I'm not
you're
running.
Hearing me. She has nothing to lose.
It doesn't matter. If people want to vote for her.
No, I get that about voting.
They can vote.
But
she doesn't have to do anything.
And if people want to campaign as well, Paul,
that's it.
There's
no law that says people can't.
I know, you can't
There's
campaign.
No law that says I can't on Ivy Street go and knock on every door in New Hallville and say, you know what? I want you to rethink your position with Mayor Harp. I think she should be our mayor for the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. I think we can make change. We can show people that this is how we do community work. Right. That's really ought to be the message. That the people from the ground up say, you know what? We don't need a machine. We're going to do this for her and for us.
We're going to exercise democracy on the ground level. Yes.
See, that's it. See, they need that inspiring message.
Because
now, they don't got
tell you
nobody in
something.
that camp that could deliver that.
Right. Now, let me just say this much. Something like that happened. Babs, you're absolutely right. That's not just a local story. That's not just a state story.
That be
becomes
huge.
a national story,
Yes.
if not international.
Yes.
Okay.
And can you
That is
imagine
a
if we
real
planted?
story right
Imagine if
there.
we planted a persimmon seed on the green, and 90 persimmon trees and 40 apple trees grew out of there in 6 months, and we fed the whole city. That would be an international story.
Let me tell you something.
You got choked.
Let me tell you something. You coming
To
up
this
on
man and Mike,
let me
he
tell you
starts thinking
something.
he's a comedian.
You coming up on a holiday, and don't nobody have more holidays than Jews.
Yeah.
But there's a little story about lamp and oil.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Right?
No, that's
Thank you.
that's the one in December.
Well, whatever.
But it's still
Okay.
a story.
It's still a story
Yeah.
that y'all
Miracles
embrace.
happen.
Miracles happen every day.
every day.
So there you go.
I agree.
Just saying.
I agree, and I think it's great if people want to vote for Joni Hartman. Feel she should. I feel for her because I feel like it was very hard for her to come to this point. And now you got people who are keeping illusions alive. And what happens? So she's
Why?
on the ballot
But why is it
Why
an
is it-
illusion?
Yeah, why is
because
this the
I
illusion?
mean, if the likelihood is that she'll be stopped.
Listen, we had a
But
black.
what's wrong
once
with
upon-
going all the way and
I
be
know.
stopped? You
What?
know, that's
So
a
what?
problem. So what?
Oh, see, that's you know what? Because you ain't
Yeah.
black in America.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? If you
Because
understand,
if you black in America, baby,
you don't think of
ain't no
stopping.
stopping us
Ain't
now.
no stopping. The bottom line is when you go,
Listen.
when you wake up every morning and you know just getting from
Yes.
home to work is a challenge
Yes.
because you can get stopped by the cops.
Listen.
You can get stopped by so many different
Listen,
things.
when
you
we
try
were,
forward.
when we landed on Jamestown, that
Yeah.
was not the end of our story.
Thank you.
That was the
Alex
end of our
Talbot.
story.
People
Alex
think
Talbot wrote, my scenario is as unlikely as a 4-year-old with polio in segregated Utah rising to become New Haven's first woman mayor.
There you go.
the bottom line here is, can you imagine if Harriet Tubman has said it's not gonna work?
Or I'm just gonna get me free.
I'm just, yeah, you know what? Can you imagine? It took an underground railroad.
Which is what? A network of people
Thank you.
doing covert stuff
Thank
in
you.
plain sight.
Thank you. And that's what they need to realize can happen
So
here.
the power is with the people.
Underground
But other
railroad
folks
could
had
move.
done that before.
What's that?
Okay? Other folks before the Underground Railroad here in America, they have had to live that kind of a life also.
Oh,
Okay?
I'm quite sure.
You know,
I don't
I'm
know what
quite
you
sure.
mean.
I don't
Anne
know.
Frank, the Diary of Anne Frank.
Yeah.
That's a
That was-
perfect example.
But that came after the Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
The Underground Railroad.
The Underground Railroad slavery.
Yeah.
But Anne Frank wasn't during that time
World
also?
War II.
No.
World War II.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
You know,
the
Anne
Jews have
Frank,
had
the
to hide
Nazis.
also
Yeah,
for
big-
many. Everyone has had to hide at one time or another. Okay, to be able to move forward. But it's true in terms of. I think it's very important to know how one feels in terms of the energy, and if the mayor has the energy and she wants to do it, okay, to surround herself around people that really have her back is very, very important.
Now that's key right
listen,
there, you know.
But we don't listen. Let me tell you what I see.
Hmm.
We don't need her to do anything at this point.
Really?
She's already said, "Hey, my name is on the ballot."
Vote for me if you want
She
to.
don't got to do anything else.
She really don't.
Now it's the people that have to do something else.
Yep.
It's the people who believe that they want her to be her mayor
Right.
to come together and say, "We don't need her knocking on doors.
Right.
We're gonna do this because we want
believe in you.
democracy
Right.
in action. This is grassroots power to the people, and the people will speak." That's
You know
it.
what's very
That's the
interesting?
message.
How her name got on the ballot. Did the working family assume that she was a shoo-in, and that is why
It
they
don't make a
took
difference.
and they
No,
endorsed
no,
her?
the reason they-
because now they've taken all their ground support.
But that's
from her.
okay. That's
You know?
okay. They're not. Once again, we're looking at the machine.
Yeah.
No. There's no.
We need
there
to-
was no machine.
No, but a structure.
You guys are making up a story.
Time out,
Structure,
time out,
structure.
Paul.
Yes, there
Time
is
out.
structure.
Wait a minute.
Maybe not
There was
machine,
no
but
what?
structure.
If
was
there's
no
any
what?
machine that worked for Tony Hart, the machine is contractors and employees of the city who try to save their job by going to elect an incumbent who give them favors in return. Boise's Kimber, the people working at City Hall, the Giordano brothers.
And that's not the.
That
No,
is
he
that's
machine.
talked
not
That
the
about
was
the
machine.
other
Tony Harp's
machine
That's
that
not
was
a
against
machine?
her.
That was Tony Harp's machine.
But it wasn't
But
a
what
machine.
about the other machine that was
was.
against
Okay,
her?
a machine that works against her. Which part
It
of
worked
that I
for
said wrong?
her. She worked for her.
Yeah, right.
That was her campaign, Joe.
Yeah, right.
And that's what people wanted to change.
Okay, well, let me just say this. You
Well,
don't
here's
need
how
to
change
structure them,
comes.
Paul.
Power
They
to
wanted
the
boys.
people.
They wanted decisions that weren't by Boise, Kimber, and contractors.
All right, that's fine.
Fine.
We don't need her for this part.
Right.
If they want her,
Yeah, I got that.
then the game changes. If people
I got
go
that.
out to those polls and write and vote her, they don't have to write it. Just
Right.
pull the trigger
I
for
got
her.
you. And by
No
the way, for
trigger,
the
fill
record,
in the little ball.
Norma, you know why the Working Families Party backed her? Because they thought she was great. They are the labor wing of the Democratic Party. They cross-endorse candidates who they feel within the Democratic Party will advance their agenda. They back Toni Hart because she has a great labor record going back her entire career. She really gets working family issues. Among her best moments in this campaign for me was the way she talked about people working the two jobs and the role Unite Here has played. I thought it really was someone whose career was built on that. And the Working Families Party was worried that Justin Elicker would privatize government jobs. I don't think he will, but they clearly made a decision based on who had the strong labor
But
record.
Paul, then you go and say that you're not going to, even though you endorse her, I mean,
Because
you're not
now,
going to
Norma,
spend any time at all here anymore?
Well, they said they had a very high priority that 2 candidates in Hamden are running for the city council for at-large seats, and they just have more of a priority for that.
I don't. That's neither here nor there.
No, the real thing is they thought it was pathetic that she didn't drop out because, yes, you should keep running if you want to, and the dreams are wonderful, but the truth is she shouldn't have run this year. She had a
Why?
great career.
Why?
Because she had a great career and things
So
were falling
what?
apart. The
So
government,
Nobody.
people
listen,
want. Okay, she can run if she wants. I'm just saying they thought it was
on the
a dumb-
Muhammad Ali. Listen,
Okay.
I'm with Muhammad Ali. Nobody gets to tell me anything.
No one
Thank
gets to
you.
tell her
I
anything.
gets to
I
I
agree.
gets to swing until I can't
Right.
swing
Swing
no
no
more.
more.
That's right.
But
That's
you know
it.
what? Here's a
No one should
and
tell
using
her
another
anything.
boxing
I'm
metaphor.
like Venus Williams. I'm gonna play until I'm ready
Sure,
to quit.
but you know
I
what?
don't care what I did in the
All I'm
past.
saying, Babs, that people sometimes know when it's time to hold them and fold them. And if they want there to be people of color running the city, there were 4 or 5 people who would have been the next mayor if she had seen what everybody understood was happening on the ground.
Ain't nobody stopping none of them people from running right now.
I
They
didn't
weren't
see
gonna
any
take
of
on
them
But they
Tony.
didn't want to run
You
against
can't run
Tony.
now.
Ain't
Tony.
no
You
No
kid.
can't
one
run
stepped
now.
up as
But
a
see,
Democrat.
this is the point that I'm making. That
If
you,
you-
make the decisions based on what you think you see or
Right.
know. But there was nothing written in stone that said none of these people could not run.
None
Now,
of them could run in the primary. No, there was nothing that said you can't run in the
No,
primary.
but
They
nobody
could've ran in the
wanted. No,
primary.
people respected Tony.
You can-
of the
you can
many
respect,
minority
but
community.
listen,
You can
respected
you can
and
respect,
her so
but you
much
still
that
have
they
a
would
right.
not run against her.
Okay,
But
They
just so what?
would
Just
not
like
run
she
against
But that's
her.
has
the
right-
choice.
right.
The only
That's a
one
choice.
that
She has
stepped
the-
up to that was Elicker, but everybody else that wanted to be mayor, and you have a
Well,
whole
then-
bunch of them
well,
that
they didn't want to be mayor.
They didn't want to be mayor.
They just didn't
What
want.
would you have
they didn't
said?
want to run
What
against
would you
Tony.
have said if 2 prominent African Americans split the black vote and let a white guy walk in with
Yeah.
a minority like
Then
they
it would-
did?
they
That guy
would've
we
been
got Ben DeLito.
crucified.
Would you thought that was cool, Babs? Would you think
No,
that
no,
was
no.
taking
I-
it
I-
up?
That is not the point that I'm making.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not making that point. I wouldn't have liked that. That's not the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is that at any given time, if people want it, you take your shot.
That's
you
what
don't,
Elka
you don't
did.
wait. And that's right. Mediocre white men have always been taking a shot, right?
Woo.
They always take a shot. They
Woo.
wake up in the morning and say, you know what? I want this thing. And then they go do it.
Ain't-
Talented black women, we got to bend over backwards, kiss ass, walk backwards in heels to get people to sort of take us seriously. So listen,
Mhm.
if people want Mayor Harp to continue to be mayor,
Mhm.
then they will do what they see is in the best interest of the
Mhm.
city, and they don't need her to knock on their door and ask for their vote. She's already asked for it. So here's your opportunity to vote if this is what you want. Now, if you don't want this, you got another choice. You can make another choice.
That's right.
That's all I'm saying. Make
All right.
another choice.
All right.
Amen.
Can I remind people that they're listening to
That was my mic.
Pundit Friday, WHHFM 103.5 FM? You want to throw in a few more?
No, I think it's important that anyway,
All right.
just let the
Can we
jazz
talk about
flow.
prison gerrymandering?
Prison gerrymandering? Yes.
It was
Yes.
a good week for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, for getting rid of it.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not that we
should
got
get
rid of it. It was a great victory this
No.
week.
We
That
actually, it actually got rid of.
no, but we got we got along the
it's-
path.
We-
What
we
happened
raised
is
the
that
Please
awareness
explain-
of-
just so
please
people know,
explain
prison
prison
gerrymandering is if you're going to lock up a lot more black people than anybody else from cities,
Mm-hmm.
put them in some prisons in small towns.
Yep.
If you're going to count them as residents of
Of
those small
that
towns,
small town.
and
then
your
those
town
towns-
benefits from
they
that.
get more political power.
Right.
and then the cities get screwed.
And I was talking
and
about
that's what
this.
they do in Connecticut.
Yep.
So there's a great lawsuit done by the NAACP.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
By David Rosen's law firm. In fact, that fellow, Alex Talbis, it was the one who argued it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Yale Law Clinic. Good team. And Germano Kimbrough was one of the plaintiffs.
Yep.
Okay.
Along with Justin Farmer.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, I'm getting cheated out of my town because our city isn't getting the votes, and it's racist. And they went to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals because the state said, let's throw out this case. You got no case. We shouldn't even be able to put this to trial.
Yeah, right.
And the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, that's not a slam dunk.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all Democratic judges.
Mm-hmm.
And they unanimously said, this is a viable case. Let's go. Let's bring it on. Let's start getting evidence. Let's put it to a trial.
Yep.
So New Haven's going to have its day in court.
Yep.
And Hampton gets screwed out of this too. Justin's from Hampton. And I thought it was a great victory. I really salute the people who worked so hard on it. And you could fight the power. And there are many more ways of fighting the power than just election day.
This is such a big thing to me when I see, gerrymandering first and foremost should be illegal in this country, if not everywhere. It is the most, oh my God, the easiest way for these people to disenfranchise people. And when you take someone, first of all, we have a justice system that incarcerate minority men at an alarming rate, drag them out. There are no penitentiaries in the city. So long-term stay is always all the way out in these rural towns and all these places.
I like Jaywan says, gerrymandering is affirmative action for small towns.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Like
we
don't want these Negroes living next to us.
You know what?
No. We want them living as long as they're caged.
Yes.
Okay. You know what's amazing about when they lock up people disproportionately? Some people were reporting out last week. You remember the African-American woman who was homeless? And she got her kid into a school in a nice district.
Correctly.
They put her for 5 years
Yep,
in jail.
they give her time.
And then the rich woman actress, I forget her name,
God.
Huffman
probation,
or something.
and she's crying about her.
20,000.
No, she got a few months.
Yeah,
for
20,000. And had to
using
pay
that
what,
money to
20,000?
buy their kid
got a few
illegally and illegal ways into Yale.
Yeah.
That was sick.
Totally sick.
When you look at that, that was
I'm sorry.
sick.
I'm sorry. What America you live in?
I guess
America been sick
I guess
for
Babs.
400 years.
I guess Babs. I know every story you hear about bail and bond, and people get locked up for being bored. It's all sick, but sometimes Babs. Maybe it's because I'm white.
United
Maybe
States
because
of
I'm
America
white.
has been sick for 400 years.
I do get outraged. I haven't lost a set outraged when I see something like that. It just it knocks me over.
You know what I feel like? There should be no black person ought to be locked up for trying to get education for their children, considering that education was outlawed for us.
Thank you.
Thank
you. That is
we were
a hell
talking
of
about
a point.
affirmative action.
Yeah.
Okay. If you really look at this country, it was founded, okay, on affirmative action for white people. If you look at the 50 states, how in order for it to be fair, everybody gets only two what?
Senators.
2 senators, right? No matter how many people you have, okay? But just so that each state gets represented.
And it did have to
That
do
is
with protecting
affirmative
slave,
action.
and that was also about
Yeah,
slaveholding
for slave
states.
owners.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is
the power of
affirmative
slave
action.
owners, yeah.
And also right now, when you take in boards and commissions, they have slated for the
Minority power,
minority party positions.
meaning
So
Republicans.
white
here.
people have actually been doing affirmative action way before it was fashionable.
Anyway, I
for
totally
the
agree with you, but I will
African-Americans.
point out that New Haven, for some reason, a number of the Republicans who get those minority seats are minority. Thinking like William Wynn and people like that. But yeah, your point's well taken.
Yeah, no, but that's in New Haven. But in all the other
Yeah.
cities, that's
Yeah.
or towns, is definitely not
Wharton,
the case.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Totally.
Yeah.
I'll say this: affirmative action is a very effective thing. And as
Well,
long as
it
we
works.
utilize,
Well,
as long as affirmative action is done properly, then
Well,
then
I mean,
of course
well,
it's
you
not-
know-
Harry Drost
But when
is
we
chomping
have
at the bit.
CEOs,
Well-
when we have CEOs who go out and deliberately hire unqualified minorities just to put them in a position to scream,
I thought that's
I'm
what
showing you.
I think that's what
just-
torpedoed affirmative action. Rather than doing the real work to open opportunity for people who are qualified, you set them up to
Well,
fail.
I'll say
Exactly.
this.
You set 'em up
I'll
to
say
fail,
this.
and that's what it
it
is.
has been white women who benefited from affirmative action.
That's
So,
true.
so you know what? If you
You're
want
right.
to undo affirmative action, then you want to undo white
Can we
women.
ask Harry Drost, because he came in chomping, could you do it without mentioning the name Trump and anything about impeachment?
or
Oh,
Obama,
That could be the fair.
Obama.
or Hillary
Or
Clinton
Obama.
emails.
Sure. I am not going to contradict anything that was said. I just, well, maybe one thing. I just wanted to, point of information. The United States is actually 243 years old instead of 400. I know there's I know there's children listening, so I just want to give accurate
Harry,
stats.
1619, 20 Africans were brought to these shores for the...
Did we have a constitution, a Declaration of Independence back then?
It was the beginning. It was the beginning of this country.
This is the formation of the country.
I think you're talking about the colonies.
Yeah, just because the foundation was what you don't want to ignore the foundation.
Do you know where
of
some
the
of the people came from? Sierra Leone.
I know.
Yeah.
They were here.
They rebelled, and they showed how they could use our legal system sometimes and get justice. The way the prison gerrymandering is seeking justice. Cinque and his or Singbe Pia, the slaves who revolted did the country's first civil rights trial in New Haven and won their freedom. And we now have a great relationship with that country. They came from Sierra Leone. And this week, the president of Sierra Leone is, he was in New York, Julius Maada Bio, and I'm sorry if I said that wrong. He said, I'm coming to New Haven. And we didn't realize it this week. We had a presidential visit.
Yeah.
Matter of fact,
pretty impressive.
One I would much prefer to a different presidential visit, like our president. I thought that was cool. And when he came, he stood with Mayor. He and his wife, First Lady, stood with Mayor Harp.
That was a beautiful photo.
It was from Tom Breen in front of the Cinque statue that we have in our city hall. I thought that was beautiful.
Africa is calling folks back. Parts of Africa are calling people back.
Oh yeah,
I might have to answer that call because America.
I'm not ready.
But what do you think about the slaughter on our streets, folks?
I hear you knocking.
What slaughter?
What slaughter? Cars running over pedestrians. Did you know? I'm not making light of it. In August alone, 5 people were killed by drivers, pedestrians.
Yeah.
Wow. 5 just in August. Do you know that from this Saturday through Tuesday, let me do my math, guys, this higher order math, 4 days, 6 people were hit. And according to our police department, unless you make a video, say, I am now running through a red light, I am now waiting for someone to cross who has permission, and now I'm going to run them over. If you don't have a video like that, they always say it's the pedestrian's fault, and they let them go.
Really?
No,
Even though Roland Lamar,
we have
our state rep,
law.
We did, and that state law did not prevent them from charging a woman who was like speeding and looked at her phone and ran into a whole line of daycare kids on Howard Avenue.
And if it was out in the suburbs, they would have been charged. Because let me tell you something, they don't
Even
play
the suburbs love the car.
They don't play around on those
suburbs.
white lines. They don't play around. Listen. Cars come to screeching.
So anyway, what do we can do,
halt.
folks? Like, this is outrageous.
This is outrageous. Let's not dismiss me, please. What happened here is, no, you get these guys who come in from their nice little areas. They sit off in the guy. I'm not going to use the word nice.
That woman with the daycare kids was from New Haven.
Excuse me?
She was from New Haven.
Okay, but the guys who are making the decision if you're going to charge or not, where are they from?
New Haven.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Why is this a suburbs thing? We got a problem in New Haven. Our police department is on the side of people run over kids and other people. We had a law that was passed to stop it. They told them how to write the law. So they wrote it that way. And then they said, this is too ambiguous. Now we can't ever charge anybody under it. So they rewrote the law. But it's also, I'll tell you, the one pedestrian.
I thought as long as you're in the crosswalk, it's illegal. You hit the person you're.
It's called the vulnerable users law. And they have to say the police said, when you write this law, tell them it has to be a serious injury. So they said serious injury. Then they said, we can't charge anyone because she said serious injury. They're still breathing. We can't charge them. The kid only lost like half an arm or something. So, now truth is pedestrians sometimes and cyclists are not the greatest crosser. I myself, like some situations, if I were hit, I would be at fault. But there are other situations, so many places in New Haven, where I walk and I have to wait till I see no car even in the distance. I'll give you an example. Walking down Whaley Avenue West, where the first time you get on Blake Street, where the liquor store and now the road curves, there's no anything. They come so fast like a speedway. Everybody from New Haven, Joe. And I have been there where there was no one a block away on the boulevard.
Don't understand. He's over here talking about.
I'm in the middle.
Hit the person.
I'm in the middle of the crosswalk. Like I start in the crosswalk when there's no car even a block away. Now I'm not the fastest guy in the world, but I'm not. I have my knees still. I'm in the middle of the block, and they come so fast and swipe around without looking. And it's not once, it's not twice, it's all the time. And you just got to pray you get across the street.
Let me ask
And
you.
in this car, there are no consequences in the city. Can you believe that 6? Can you imagine if 5 people were shot in dead in
Paul,
August?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I think
I'm
it's a real
100%
issue.
with you. I don't know what the heck is this, but what I'm saying is that
Gotta get mad at
You're
someone,
saying-
Joe. It's your fault they got run over.
you're saying
I'm
that
like,
when
we
people
agree.
you're saying that when people in the crosswalk get hit,
You're against getting hit. Okay.
you say someone.
Points.
Let me make sure I
know.
understand this. You're saying someone is in the crosswalk, they got hit, and it's their fault.
According to New Haven Police Department. Because
Okay,
if
it
they're
says
still
state law
like if you
on
go to
those
the hospital.
tags.
Yeah.
It's a state law on those tags that they put in the middle of the street. Yield to pedestrians.
Oh no, we're talking
state
about 2
law.
issues here. First is whether first is whether they can establish. They always take it from the driver's point of view when they investigate. But second of all, they can't prove it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But second of all, they have this vulnerable users law where there's supposed to be an extra penalty for that. They've never invoked it. In case after case, there was a kids coming off a school bus on Elm Street, and some Yale kid wasn't looking and ran into him, and like they didn't die, so it wasn't serious.
I mean, I think like anything, once you raise the awareness of it, then cops act accordingly. Judicial people act accordingly, and this stuff gets handled. I think as long as people don't think it's happening as much as it is happening, they just sort of like, oh, it's an isolated incident.
Didn't we used to get brought up thinking that even if you're in the wrong, you're still responsible if you run over somebody?
I always thought
I
that.
always thought that. Was
I always
Yeah.
thought pedestrians always had the right
Now
of
it's
way.
like unless it could be proved 9 times
Now it's
over.
like Pac-Man. You 10 points, 20 points.
And obviously
if I
But
the
you
root
know,
of-
I,
kids,
I
500
have
points.
noticed, okay, that's one of the ways to be able to deal with those intersections or those streets is the humps, the
Oh
bumps.
God! Don't even start with me on
They
that.
really need
Who
to
came
put
up
those
with-
bumps
Okay.
because these people. It's true. You have all kinds of people driving out there that come from other places that
Right.
don't know
Okay.
the rules of the road,
Right.
and they drive like they drive in
Oh, no, it's
those
not.
countries.
Okay.
It's not other people. It's people right here.
Yeah.
There's a speed
There's
hump in my neighborhood on my street, which I love. I wish it was 2 because once they get over that first hump, there's still a little bit of Autobahn.
And it's true, that's how we drive. Like, I'm really glad I almost never drive because I'm worried I'm going to hit someone sometime. I try really hard not to, but I get lost in thought like Mr. Magoo. Other people, I don't do this. They look at their phone. Good song on the radio. Like, who doesn't put on the radio when you're driving? Like, it is, I mean,
A lot of
it begins with us.
distraction, yeah.
But Joe's mad.
Have anyone drove across Clinton Avenue there in Fairhaven?
Yeah.
That's a
From
speedway.
Grand Avenue
That's a speedway.
to
Yeah.
okay, they have the speed bumps
Yes,
in
they
the
do.
road, but here's the deal: when you get to the speed bumps are in the crosswalk,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no sign that says a hump, and the road looks flat. So you go, so you're going over these things, and you just bam, bam. I'm like, yo, I am literally doing 18 miles per hour.
I tell you, when I was out, when I drove the Pacific Coast Highway, we stopped in Malibu, and in the roads they had these things that looked like crates that you could drive over. They looked ominous, but you could drive over them. They were designed so you could drive over them and won't damage your car. But you could
can't
not.
back up.
You can't fly over it.
Oh,
Like there's no you have to like do 5 miles an hour, and it looked like a like claws coming up out of the road. I thought that was the coolest thing, and I was like,
so
but
if
I've never
you
seen
fly
them
over,
anywhere
they pop
else.
your tire.
Well, if you fly over, you're gonna have some problems because
Oh, okay.
you're not gonna be able to. You have to slowly go over them.
Oh.
Like you are forced to do that. I was like,
No, but a lot of people think
Whoa.
where is it? The Autobahn. Where is the place that what country?
Germany.
where
Germany.
you can drive as
You
fast
just-
as you
Germany.
can.
As a matter of fact, I was looking at a picture. I was looking at a video of me on the Autobahn just yesterday, man. Oh, God, I abused that road.
Hey,
I
this
know.
this weekend,
Just last year, I was out
you guys
there
are going to see
going
me
nuts.
coming in and out a lot the next couple of weeks. This is that 4-week crazy holiday spree for
Oh.
Jews. 2 days off next
Happy
week,
Rosh Hashanah.
then Yom Kippur for a day.
Happy Yom Kippur.
The week after that, Sukkot. The week after that, Shmini Atzeret. Everyone says, what the hell is that? But the thing that's happening right now.
You know,
and
I
this was-
always say that in my next life, I want to be born Jewish because they have
you
all.
don't-
I thought Latinos had holidays.
Excuse me, you don't have to be
Jewish
born.
people have more
So what we're doing now,
holidays.
what we do now as
Can't
we
you
approach, as she's an
I gotta
honorary
marry
member. She's an
somebody.
honorary member of the tribe.
There you go.
So as we approach Rosh Hashanah in the new year, we have this period of deep self-reflection at all things we've done wrong. Then we spend 10 days, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, beating our breasts and listing all the things we've done wrong or that we don't even realize we did wrong. Say it over and over. We pray like hell until on Yom Kippur 10 days later, the gates of heaven close. It's the ark day goes. You know,
So
after
the goal is to like slide in before they close.
Right. And
No,
for
but
another
you
year.
also read the book of Jonas.
Yes,
I
we
read
do.
that last night.
Yes. So 25 hours of fasting ends at the end of that 10-day period. And we close the gates of the Torah as it's dark and we're all going to finally eat. And those are the gates of heaven closing. Hope we get in and hope. And first thing we try to do as the season starts is to make right what we've done wrong to other fellow humans and what we've done wrong with God. And so
Are you writing me a check? I'm just trying to.
You read my mind.
I tell you, Paul is serious here.
No,
You
no.
guys are putting it on.
No, it's cool. No, I just want to apologize for anything I've done wrong to you guys in this year. Because we all make mistakes.
No, I'm not Jewish, so I
And
ain't
you guys
apologizing
are great.
for nothing.
And I love you all. And I hope that
No.
I hope that you guys are written in the book of life for many, many years,
Thank
not
you.
just
Yes.
this year.
Happy
not
Rosh
just,
Hashanah.
not just 5780.
Yes,
May peace be with you.
All right.
and also with you.
Anyway, thank you for joining us today in Dateline New Haven. Thanks to Pundits Babs Rolls Ivy, Norma Rodriguez Reyes, Harry Jerosis Cameo, and Joe
people,
Ugly.
Vote.
Vote!
Vote, people, vote.
Malibu Babs. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all weekend long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.